Good day, everyone. I'm your host, James Hicks from Hicks New Media, and welcome to Perspectives in Focus, where we highlight the people, industries, and ideas that are making positive strides within society today. Today, my guest is Mr. Carlos Martinez. He is a private practicing clinician. He's a speaker, he's a mentor, and a coach with the aim to help individuals and couples learn new skills, strategies, and insights to develop greater emotional intelligence. He's passionate about empowering individuals to take responsibility in a manner that benefits those around them and aim to help them comprehend their own beliefs and motivations through the concept of ownership. Today, we're going to talk about redefining masculinity and the evolving role of man and men in today's society. It's going to be a good conversation. Listen, Carlos is a wealth of knowledge, and we're going to identify some practical tools for personal growth during this discussion. I know you're going to have questions, so you might as
Mm.
well just cue them up right now and get ready for it. Let's get into it.
Mm. Mhm.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Listen, I'm just going to leave it at that right there.
Mm. That was
Uh,
awesome. Man, wow.
Practical tools
Yeah.
for personal growth, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen.
Yeah. That's it, right? I mean, just good to be here, man. James,
And
I'm always lurking around, man. I'm always lurking around
no, don't lurk too
your
much now. Don't lurk too
your
much.
streams,
Yeah,
I'm chatting away because I love the stuff that you've been bringing, and, when gave me the invitation, man, I'm like, "Yeah, let's do this, man, for
there we
sure."
go.
And I'm just, we hang in the same kind of, community, and
Yeah.
so totally honored to be here, man, and talk about this stuff.
Thank you, brother.
Right?
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that the feeling is mutual. And listen, this is
Mm.
one of those conversations again that needs to happen, that
Oh,
tends to be sidestepped, overlooked, or
yeah.
pushed
Yeah.
to the shelf because folks get uncomfortable. But I think
Yeah.
we, and again, as men, need to have the fellowship and have the dialogue
Mhm. Mhm.
about men and
Mhm.
how we fit within society and how
Mhm.
we own our role within society.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that
Yeah.
completely makes sense, but again, I wanted to start there. But before we even go too far deep into the discussion, I get the
Yeah.
35,000 foot level. I
Yeah.
always like to have folks kind of tell their origin story. So, Carlos, if you don't mind just giving folks who it
Yeah.
is that you are and what it is that you do, sir.
Absolutely. Well, born and raised here in Southern California, the Pasadena area, right? Kind of a suburb of Los Angeles. And I uh, I started working in this field about 20 years ago, and really, I started with that the way that a lot of us start. A lot of us clinicians, people who work, therapists, counselors, those of us who work in this field, where we usually start? We usually start with our own stuff. And you know how it works, James, is we work on our own stuff. We start having breakthroughs. We start experiencing more emotional freedom, and we're breaking unhealthy patterns in our life. And guess what we want to do with it? We want to share it. And that's what happened to me. I had a career, before, but as I began to do my personal work, and this was back to my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, I started doing a lot of personal work because of a lot of stuff I was going through. I had a serious attachment problem, James. Serious attachment problem, man. And I was just getting into trouble with that, with relationships. Relationships blowing up, man, left and right. And I decided, at that time, I got to do something different here. I don't see this changing.
Mm,
If I keep doing the same thing over and over again, I keep thinking it's going to change by itself. And I'm like, this is it. At some point, finally, I was so overwhelmed that I reached out for help. I jumped into therapy, and I began to surround myself with really healthy people, safe people, who
mm,
weren't and I don't mean safe people. To me, unsafe people are fixers, analyzers, or advisors. Those are the people that I don't like to go to. They're so hungry to fix, analyze, and advise. It's like, that's not what I want from you.
wow.
So
Yeah.
I surrounded myself with people who were great listeners, and I began to do my personal work. And with those breakthroughs I started to have, um, I began to want to share that. So um, I ended up meeting somebody, who's now my wife, right, I would say 3 years into that process. And you know what's really interesting about that, James, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, but thank God I did that work, man, because There is no way I would have met this woman. There's no way I
Yeah,
would have felt good enough for this woman. There's no way I would have felt in the same league with, well, I'm still not quite in the same league,
pretty much.
but
You know.
you know, but I mean, and so it was really awesome, the way that we connected. But that's because of a lot of the healing stuff I had gone through. So a couple of years into my marriage, my wife ended up telling me one day, that volunteer work that you're doing, helping people, and this was kind of at our church. And I was like, I was working in these recovery groups doing some work. And she said, you seem a lot happier when you come back from those groups than you do from your job.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, well, maybe I should start considering, changing careers. And that's what I did. And so I started out in intense adolescent treatment and worked with young people and their parents. The most difficult thing you'll ever do is
Mm-hmm.
working with parents of struggling kids. And there I just grew, and I grew my practice, and I began to work with a lot of couples and individuals that I've been doing that for years, and my office is here in Pasadena. I love it, man. I'm blessed
And
to be able to do what I feel I've been called to do, and
that's
that
really
is
cool.
helping people. So yeah,
That's really cool.
that's
And
the story.
and I love the fact that you started that, and you had a component of that you actually had to do the work on yourself first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, that you actually
Absolutely.
that you acknowledged that there had to be some work on self before you can get out there and
Yeah.
help others as well,
Oh yeah.
right? Um,
Absolutely. Yeah,
that
totally.
that's key, right? Because I tend to say I'm not the professional, ladies and gentlemen. Carlos is the professional. I'm just here, the Wizard of Oz, back here pulling the strings and making things move. But if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else,
That's true, man. You could, but it
regardless.
doesn't, yeah, it just doesn't stop you from trying though. It's like,
Okay,
we're all trying,
yeah,
even though we're not healthy. I mean, again, that's what fixers and analyzers and advisors do. They may be really unhealthy, but that's
yeah,
not going to stop them from trying to help you. And it's not, it's they're neglecting themselves, right? That's what we do. We neglect ourselves when we're in that place, and we're not really effective. We're not really effective. Somebody in a group one time asked me, in this support group I was in, they said, several years ago, he shared something, and then after he shared, we moved on and we went to each person. And at the end of that, this person said, well, I'm still waiting to get advice. That's why I came to this group. I came to this group because I want somebody to tell me what to do. And so I said, well, hang on a minute. Let me look around the group. Everybody who wants to give, I don't know, let's call him John. So I said, anybody who wants to give John some advice, raise your hand. Everybody rose their hand as fast as you can think about. Right.
yeah,
And I looked at John and I said, that's why we don't do crosstalk, because
gotcha.
everybody here is so eager to get their eyes off themselves and put it right on you and try to fix you.
Amazing,
And so
amazing.
you just need to keep coming, man, and working your stuff out.
So
So,
let's do that, right? And I see a couple of folks
mhm,
already chiming in. I see
mhm.
Awesome Wood things asking, does femininity need to be redefined as well? Let's come to that, but let's. I want to ask you the question: where are we as a society today, from your professional
Mm,
perspective? You see a lot of the conversations that I have on some of my other sessions, and where we get into awkward conversations, we get into more social engagement and those types of things. And unfortunately, they tend to be a higher percentage of negative discussions or
yeah,
negative
yeah,
topics, and where we
right,
look to try to come up with
right,
a realization or a call to action, something that we can
yeah,
help do something better. But
hmm,
why is there so much of that? Where are we as a society today?
yeah,
And
yeah,
maybe how do we get here?
hmm,
Is it social? Is it political? Is it economic? Is it because the world stopped 3 years ago and we're still trying to come out of that? All of those things. I'm really
mm,
an open book and really curious myself to what,
yeah,
from your perspective, where are
yeah,
we today in terms of healing and positivity?
man. Yeah, this is not easy. Like you said,
I
man, it's
just
not
threw
an
that
easy
one on
topic.
you. You know what? I apologize. I just threw that one on you, and that was like a ton of bricks. But God,
Well, I'm hoping that we'll do this again, but I have to preface this by saying I've been invited to give talks, and sometimes I'm never invited back because this stuff gets hard, man. I
yeah, yeah,
literally have had pastors say, "I'm sorry, Carlos, but we can't have you back because you dug too deep. You went too deep." Okay, and scare a lot of people, but no easy answer to this.
yeah.
Obviously, what I would say is, It's a combination of a lot of things, James. And so the pandemic had a lot to do with speeding some things up. Okay. But we've had this issue for a long time. If you want to see why we're kind of moving in this direction with a lot of the ideologies that, we're subscribing to today, you know what it is? If you just look at Europe,
Mm,
we're about 7 to 10 years behind. Um, and so when you look at things like, I don't know, just, for us, gender ideology is fairly new. Uh, Europe has been doing this for the last 10 years. They've been wrestling with this, and they're further down the road, way further down the road than we are. And that's because a lot of this stuff was introduced to them many years ago when America was closed off to it. Okay, Alfred Kinsey, the Kinsey Institute, kind of like the godfather of gender ideology. Him and his predecessors, John Money, et cetera. They tried to introduce that to us in the 40s and 50s. They tried to introduce that to Western society, or actually America, really, the U.S., because that's where it was really birthed, and we wouldn't take it.
hmm
It was just too much for us as a culture to make that giant shift. So where did they go? They went to the Netherlands. They went to parts of Europe, and they accepted it. And so that's why you see them further down the road, with a lot of this than we are. And so what are we doing? We're going through growing pains right now. I love how you put that title, evolving, because we are, and some of it is healthy growing pains, and I think some of it, is unfortunately unhealthy growing pains,
Yeah.
and I think we're seeing a lot of a combination of a lot of things that are impacting us right now. So here's what I would say. Let's just go back to, a lot of the work I do in the Daily Man is really about helping. It's a lot like, I would say, Jordan Peterson. A lot of his philosophy. Now,
Mm,
I don't agree with him on all things, but I look at why are men, especially young men, gravitating toward that guy? Like, what is it about him?
yeah.
And I look at other men that people are gravitating towards, people like Andrew Tate, right? People who gravitated towards him. Why is it that men are what are they looking for? What are we trying to find? And they're both saying at the core some of the same things in different ways, but men are hungry, I think, to be defined. And I think that's one of the big problems we have today is a lot of men, I'm not going to generalize, but a lot of men are really confused about their role. And that all really kind of
Okay.
started back in the 60s, with the sexual revolution
Mm,
and all of that stuff. Right. And for the first time, men started to, the hippie movement, sexual revolution, men began to kind of uh, put some flowers in their hair, and they, put on those dresses, kind of, you know what I mean? It's like they weren't dresses, but you know what I mean?
mhm,
The men began to embrace that back then, artists and musicians and feelings, emotions, and all of that. And we had never done that. Before that, there was Robert Mitchum or Gregory Peck, right?
yeah.
That who was
Okay.
there before. And
Yeah.
I think men were really gravitating toward that as masculinity. And so, right around that same time, James, what happened in the late 60s and 70s is you had the feminist movement come around, right? And so men are evolving, and women now start to really take hold, and fight for that equality. And I think that's where men really started to struggle to find their healthy voice, right? Not their toxic voice, their healthy voice. I think we've struggled to find our way back, in the it was either you were Arnold Schwarzenegger, all right, or I want to say,
Yeah.
the other
Who's at the
person.
other spectrum of
Yeah, yeah. Either you were Arnold, or you
who's at
were,
that 180?
yeah, you were like a what is it, man? What did I
Howdy
forget who the
doody.
other.
I don't know. I'll say it right. That's right. I'm old
Well,
enough. I'm 50
right.
plus. So.
Yeah, I mean, you were either, muscle bound, or, you were the opposite,
Right.
and men try to find, their path in those two places, and it didn't work because women actually weren't really gravitating towards any of those people, really, and then as we hit into the 2000s, we began to hit, the metrosexual started happening. And this is really interesting because this is when Queer Eye for the Straight Guy came out. And it was so fascinating because now we had really groomed gay men who really know how to take care of themselves, right? they began to tell straight men how to take care of themselves.
Yeah. I mean, the show
And
is
so,
hugely widely popular.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And that's where I think, again, I'm talking about a lot about straight men here. They started to kind of, what's happening here? Um, and 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 that's an awesome thing to be able to get from the gay population. I mean, that's awesome.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I think it further confused straight men, and uh,
Okay.
and then we hit the neosexual,
Mm.
which is about 2013. We hit the neosexual. Neosexual is basically James Bond with a sense of humor,
Mm.
and with feelings, and you could, it's almost like we're coming back around, James, kind of to a healthier version of manhood. But man, dude, it's the young people that are really struggling right now for so many reasons. Here's Well, let me stop right there for a minute before, I don't want to keep going. What, any
Yeah.
thoughts or
Well,
questions?
yeah,
Yeah.
because I
Yep.
want to interject, and I'm gonna put
Yeah.
some of these comments up as well.
Yep.
My initial question is,
Mm.
what's wrong with, or is there anything wrong with having questions, being curious, wanting to identify masculinity, femininity, wanting to talk more emotion as opposed to, right, not always talking about the Arnold Schwarzenegger side, but talking about some of the feelings and the emotion.
Hmm.
It's almost like out of all of that discovery, out of all of that discussion, folks, men were looking to find answers to, why do I feel like this? How do I express these feelings? We're seeing women do that, and
Hmm.
women are doing it. Listen, I love the way my wife hangs out with her girlfriends
Mm.
and lives and does her thing. I told her when we got married some 23 years ago, I said, always continue to do you. Always
Mm.
continue to go out and do girls
Yeah.
trips. Always
Yeah.
continue to do that thing. And I
Right.
wish men did that more.
Hmm.
I wish men tapped into that side of their feelings and their emotions and
Hmm.
had fellowship conversations like
Yeah.
this about
Yeah.
stuff that wasn't always about how much do I bench press,
Right.
how much food can you eat, how fast can
Hmm.
your car go. Can we break through those layers? And I'm
Yeah.
asking you, kind of
Yeah.
in that
Hmm.
timeline that you went through.
Hmm.
It's almost like it was a discovery period. A
Hmm.
lot of different discovery periods for different decades and generations, saying that I want to go into that realm and
Hmm.
learn more about the whole me. But
Yeah.
I'm almost nervous, scared, intimidated because of what society is going to think if I start
Right.
looking maybe too soft or too right. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? Too different
Yeah.
than what is
Yeah.
expected of me from the Marlboro man in the commercial. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Totally get it. Yeah. So that's such an, you remember what I do
Mm,
with clients all day long, and a lot of those being men and husbands, and is getting them in touch with their feelings.
mm,
Totally. I mean, and here's an example of healthy masculinity. Okay. A health example would be your wife um, getting upset because of something that you forgot to do. Okay. So what is healthy masculinity? That's, remember, ownership, James, is to me, it's like one of the most critical components of healthy masculinity. Okay. Manhood is about taking ownership. And so what do you do at that point? Do you do passive man, or do you do aggressive man in that moment?
mm.
Aggressive would be getting defensive, and it's pushing back. You're nagging. Why are you always nagging me about this? That's aggressive man. A passive man is not saying anything, not talking about how he's feeling at all. Maybe he even does the thing, and maybe he ends up doing it, but he shuts down, withdraws, and he ends up following through at some point. Passive man and aggressive man, those don't work.
Yeah.
Ultimately, those aren't attractive. Ultimately, I don't believe, to our partners. Now, here's the thing: what's healthy manhood, masculinity? It's assertiveness, and I like to call it loving assertiveness. So a man who would take ownership in that moment would be a man who's aware of what he just of the impact that he had on what he did, by what he did. Not just aware of what he did, but aware of the impact of what he did. How did that affect your wife? Are you aware of how that thing impacts your wife? Because this has happened over and over again. If you're not taking ownership, if you're not at some point becoming more mindful of what's going on behind the scenes with my partner when I when I fail her in this way, when I
Mm.
forget to do that thing. Um, and that, to me, that ownership is about being in touch with your wife's feelings, being in touch with where she's, the things that are triggering to her, the things that are bringing up her own past, and that takes us being in touch with our own, right? I mean, we're not going to do that for her if we're not learning how to be more in touch with our own
That is so
feelings,
true,
right?
brother. That is so true.
So now, I mean, we're not, codependency is an unhealthy version, I think, of any, you know, uh, anybody, man or woman. Codependency over time it can be really destructive. So we're not talking about being codependent or enabling. Being lovingly assertive is being aware of your partner. I can't tell you, I've had people in my office who've been married 50 years, man, and they wear that like a badge of honor, you know what I mean, on their shoulder. And why are they in my office? Like, what are you doing here? You've
Yeah.
been married 50 years. Everybody else around you thinks that you guys have, won the gold medal. What are you doing here? Well, it's obvious why they're here. They've been roommates for years. And when I ask him, can you tell me three things, just three, each of them, I asked them, what are three things, three needs of your partner, three legit needs of your partner that your partner has? They can't answer it. What they share, James, is their thoughts about that. Well, I mean, my wife has always told me, that she really likes to, go to that certain spot that we go to every year. I'm not asking you where your wife likes to go. I'm asking you what her needs are, like
Yeah.
three needs that she has. We don't talk enough about that. Now, again, my perspective is when men are making their partner feel heard, understood, valued, cared for, and cherished, that's a man who's in touch with his own feelings. Otherwise, we're just touching the surface. Okay, so to answer that question a long way around, man, healthy masculinity it demands that we be more in touch with our feelings and emotions, but it doesn't require us to get stuck in them. That's the danger right there, is getting
Okay.
stuck in that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good delineation right there. Because again, it's almost being more conscious in our efforts, being more conscious in our actions. Uh, be- the assertiveness doesn't have to be dominant assert, right? But
No, it's not
what it
aggressive.
is, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that right
Mm-mm.
there, I think, is where I wanted to take that and wanted to kind of hear you say, just
Mhm.
from the clinical
Yep.
professional's perspective, right? Again,
Mhm.
I'm the layman here. I'm the what I call the armchair quarterback, and just kind of wanted to spur that dialogue. But
Mhm.
being conscious, being cognitive, being aware of those
Yep.
needs,
Yep.
and being vulnerable,
Yeah,
right?
vulnerable.
Wow. I
Totally.
mean, being vulnerable to
Yeah.
having those kinds of conversations with someone, again, you walked down the aisle with and said you're going to hang out with them
Yep.
for a pretty long time. You might
Yep.
as well get to know them and not just think you know them.
That's
Okay.
right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Let me stop.
Ooh,
We're gonna be
James,
preaching later on
what
tonight
do you
on
you don't need me on right now. You
we
just talk by yourself,
yeah,
You don't need
we're
me.
gonna be preaching later on tonight with KP
That's
on.
right. That's right on.
Uh,
You guys are gonna go crazy.
Interesting statement here by Tech Troublemaker. Good to have you here, Roy. He says, in a woke
Mm,
society, it is a challenge to figure out who we are supposed to be. We want to play well with others, but also be ourselves.
yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
it's tough, right?
It is. Yeah.
To ride both sides of the teeter totter, right?
Yeah.
It's tough
Yeah.
to be nice to you and be friendly with you and try to not piss anybody off.
Yeah.
Right, and
Yeah.
those kind of things, because the cancel culture, the woke all of that right there. how
Mhm.
how do how do men raise up and stand up, right? Because I want to bring it back to,
Ooh,
we're not trying to
man.
boil the ocean
Yeah.
here, but let's
Yeah.
focus back on men in today's society, and how do men stand
Yeah.
up and rise up to help with what Roy was just talking about.
Wow, this is a big one, because I think you guys even talked about this last night a little bit, but it's really learning how to be more comfortable in our discomfort, right? That we always talk
Mm,
about. See, we have an addiction in our society, and our addiction is to comfort. We feel we're entitled to comfort. I do. Everything, a lot of things I do is around comfort, and I don't realize. I mean, I just had my sister-in-law who came out here from another country. Okay, a country that is not comfortable like ours. Okay,
Mm. Hmm.
and I learned a lot from her when she was here for a month. I came to a deeper realization of just how much I depend on comfort, and when I don't have it, I try to make it happen. I get angry because I feel like I'm entitled to comfort. And I think that's one of those things that we need to be aware of as again, we're talking about men here, um, is we need to learn how to risk more and be more uncomfortable and be good in it, be
Mm.
okay.
Okay.
And this is a big problem because a lot of us were raised, by parents who, did, you know, kind of groom us to be comfortable. Okay. And I mean, we're at that time frame now in our culture where a lot of us grew up really comfortable, man, and expecting that. And when we don't get our comfort, we get upset, or we throw tantrums. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why people are following, certain people out there, certain men, is because it's like kind of like the lion is coming out,
Mm.
they want to be uncomfortable. They want to be in the wilderness. They want to not just to be wild, but to be reckless, to be uncomfortable, and I think that's what we're really struggling with right now. How can we be more effective within this woke culture? Is be yourself and learn how to detach after you've shared your truth. Detach, let it go. Be okay in your discomfort. Should you have maybe Did you hurt their feelings? Maybe. But where was your heart at? What was your intention? Rest on that. Okay. Did you say the wrong thing? Did you say an inappropriate thing? I mean, that's where everybody's skittish and afraid to say anything these days. You want to know the people who have the easiest time? It's the ones that were raised with the stronger identities. Okay. So
That's a good point. That's a good
Oh, so
point.
when
Yeah.
so when somebody, blasts them, they're like, you know, I they're not hit so hard, like a lot of us are, and so it is a challenge. But one of the things we can learn is we can learn how to uh, detach from conversations, not disappear, withdraw, shut down. That's not what I would think is healthy manhood. Healthy manhood is being able to let go and detach, and stay present, and that's a tough thing to do, right?
Very
But
tough
that's
to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
mhm,
And I guess I want to interject real quick. It's very tough to do, especially in today's society,
yeah,
because of this internet era, this social media
hmm
era, right? We have these phones with us all the time, and they're dinging and they're giving us dopamine hits every time we get a notification. We got to
dopamine.
check
There's
it,
another one. Yeah,
right? And then we got to respond.
yeah,
And those responses, those conversations go on for forever. You can delete your message, but it's still out there on the internet, right? And I almost wonder if we can can we completely detach and learn
well,
how to
yeah,
put those things into perspective. You see where
yeah,
I'm trying to go with that, right? Because
hmm
you talked
yeah,
about one aspect of it, but I bring up the
I think so.
technology side in today's
hmm
environment, where again we're always being hit with stimuli.
Yeah,
You and I go back again. Remember when TV used to go off at midnight?
right.
Right, so, right, okay, making it plain here, right. So today, TV,
Yeah,
well, back in the day, TV went off at midnight. There were three
yeah,
channels.
right.
Now there's 600 channels, and it's on
Yeah,
24
yeah,
hours a day, 7 days a
yeah,
week,
yeah. Remember the sign
constantly
off? The
going.
sign off, signing off. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
There's no Walter Cronkite playing the national anthem and the Star Spangled Banner,
Man,
and
you're
then just a
you're
whole bunch
taking
of
us way
snow.
back, brother.
Come on,
Oh
listen,
man.
we getting into it, man. We getting into it, right? So, and now
Yeah,
today
yeah,
we're
yeah, yeah.
always
Totally.
on, and
Yeah,
always for some reason always feel the need to respond.
yeah. And
And
that goes back to what you said earlier. So here's the thing: we have agency.
mm,
We can choose to detach. We can choose to establish, and this is another part of how I see. I see this a lot through couples. Okay, it's where so much of my work has come through seeing how men have repaired a lot of these relationships with their wives, and it's all these things I'm talking about right now. The ownership, and so one of those things is establishing healthy boundaries.
Okay.
Okay, a man who establishes healthy boundaries in his life, meaning he establishes healthy limitations, he accepts healthy limitations in his life, is liberated by them. That's what healthy limitations do. They liberate us, and it's the person that says, I'm not an alcoholic for sure. I don't have a problem drinking. Um, Yet lately, I feel like I've kind of gone to it a little bit too much lately. So you know what? I think just for now, I'm going to put a healthy limitation on that. Just for now. What? I mean, it sounds kind of nutty, doesn't it? But that's a healthy limitation. That's somebody taking ownership. They're being brutally honest with themselves, and they're okay doing that. And maybe they show up the next day to their partner's, celebration or their birthday or something, and they're drinking. And he has a strong enough identity to be able to say, when somebody comes up to him and offers a drink, he's able to say, "I'm good, man. I'm good," and he's really good. Okay, so healthy boundaries is a big part of
Yeah.
healthy masculinity. It really is. It's those healthy limitations and establishing boundaries in our life, James. We don't have to. That's what, unfortunately, I mean, FOMO is so powerful, man. It really is,
Yeah,
and
because
it's
it's
and
a
it's
lot easier to say than do, right? Right.
oh,
It's a lot
totally.
easier. It's a lot easier to say,
Yep.
just put it down,
Yeah.
turn it off, turn it over,
Yeah.
or whatever. But
Oh yeah. Yeah.
you know,
I mean, it's and my so much of my concern is the young men who a lot of the reason why I've done the Daily Man is for younger men who are they were born into the matrix, man, right? I mean, they know
mm-hmm.
nothing else other than what they've been jacked into, social media and everything else. So they are struggling with other things. I mean, if you think about it, 1 in 5 men ages 18 to 25, 1 in 5 men, 18 to 25, they're now classified as subfertile. Okay. They have low sperm count.
Mm.
That's that's 1 in 5, 18 to 25. Okay. And so it's wild, some of these things that we're seeing now, and that's all social media and what else, what I mean, it's prawn,
Yeah.
that I'll call it. And so they're jacking and they're doing what you said, James. They're constantly being stimulated. The dopamine is constantly going off. um I mean, there was a Dr. Phil show not too long ago, man, where they had three people on: a therapist, a clinical psychologist, and a neurologist. All three of them were talking about this very issue. Why are young men struggling with ED, 18 to 25? That's unheard of. They shouldn't be struggling with ED.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, James, but when I was, you know, 16, 17, dude, I was like a walking erection.
There was
Okay.
no
That
struggle.
was what I
Yeah,
was.
there was
Okay,
no
dude.
struggle.
I mean,
we
anything would get me excited, man.
you
That's how you
know
are when you're young like
let
that,
the
right?
wind blow. Next thing you know, well, there we that's I'm just saying,
Just
right?
saying, bro. Just saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, but now so much of what I'm seeing with young men is honestly, that's one of the things they're struggling with.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
it's a sad reality. Um, where men are finding this virtual connection that is overriding. It's easier. This is what young men tell me it's easier, Carlos. It's easier just to go to that. I'm not going to be rejected. I know, yeah, but you have a girlfriend though, man. What's it? Yeah, but it's just easier. It's more convenient. See, this is the passive man.
That's a bad man. That's a bad mindset, man. Oh,
Oh,
that's again. Third person remove outside, and we kind of assume some of these things, and we see those. And as you were having that discussion, I was starting to think about, oh yeah,
yeah.
the Roman commercials, the
Oh, look how young they are.
right, all those other commercials, and
Yeah,
so yeah, why are they having? Why is there so much of that type of a conversation
yeah,
in today's world? When again, when we were growing up, none of that was. It may have been happening, but I would just tell you that
yeah.
it wasn't as prolific and on the
No,
top of, and on the front of
no,
everyone's mind as
that's
it
right.
was back in the 70s, 80s, and things of that nature. So that's really interesting. And now you're
Oh, I
saying
mean
that it's just
the internet, James, the
yeah,
internet. I mean, that was the big deal, when the internet came out, that industry that we're talking about right now, that targeted to men, saw that as, we're going to be the biggest thing on the internet. And that industry, the adult industry, is the biggest thing on the internet. They're bigger than anybody. The industry, they take up all the data by far than anyone else on the internet. And you're talking about AI. Look at that industry. AI is more prolific in that industry than
Mm-hmm.
any industry you could think
Yeah.
about. Okay, because it's such a multi-billion-dollar industry, and unfortunately, our men have connected to that. They've been sucked into that passive behavior, and the problem here is, it's not the that we're not. I'm not casting judgment on this. I hope nobody gets that. We're talking about strictly from a clinical standpoint here. Okay, that the brains are less effective when we're doing anything in a compulsive manner. When we're activating that dopamine too much, there's going to be a problem. When we're activating the norepinephrine or the oxytocin, when we're activating that all the time, our brains are gonna start doing some weird things. Okay, we're going to start having problems, right? So I think that's a really big part of it. Like you were saying, social media. Oh, we need to have really healthy boundaries with our social media. We're not as present with our kids as we should be, because we're locked into that. And a lot of parents, I saw something so weird the other day. I was at Chipotle and Sarah with my wife, and I saw this family come in.
Well, first of all,
Yeah,
what do
go
you
ahead.
get? You just a Fritos bowl, or are you? Oh, sorry, squirrel, right? Okay, my kid used to work at
You
Chipotle, so
did, bro. You did.
uh,
You just went, whoa. You just did. You did the squirrel thing. Okay. I don't know, man. I like it all, bro. But I like
go
the
ahead.
bowls.
See,
The bowls are good.
I just threw you off. Go ahead.
You
I'm
know,
sorry.
but they were. Yeah, okay. I'm not
Welcome
gonna
to
go
my
there.
show.
I'm not
There
gonna
you go.
go there. Okay. But I saw this family come in. It was 7 kids that came in with this family, right?
Mm.
And all of them, it looked like they were probably 11 or 12, all the way down to probably around 4, something like that. I mean, it was a mess of kids, but they were all around that range. And it caught my eye. I have this eye of just watching, observing, and kind of studying. As I watched them all come in, I would notice something interesting. I just noticed how present all of them were really present.
Mm.
They weren't distracted. And I'm like, why is it that they're standing out to me right now? What is this? And I kept watching and I kept watching. And the parents went up to get the food. The kids ordered. Then the kids came over, and all of them started cooperating, gathering around, getting chairs, putting tables together. All of them were doing that while the parents were ordering the food. And I'm going, wow, this is. And it dawned on me, where are the cell phones?
Mm.
There's no cell phones. There's no distraction.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it was like a beautiful symphony. I'm telling you, man. I watched it and I was blown away, because I'm like, these are parents. These did not look like Gestapo parents. Okay,
Yeah.
these look like parents who just establish healthy boundaries in their family system, because these kids look happy, man. I mean, they were having fun with each other, and they were having fun with their dad, and they were having fun with their mom. The daughter was sitting next to dad, and they were cracking up together. But everybody was present, James. it was
Wow.
it was incredible. And I thought, man, we've come a long way, because we're not doing that anymore.
Well,
you know
it's unfortunate that that is now
yeah,
not the norm, right?
that's
You're
right.
seeing that stand out as
Yeah.
something that you probably miss or used to have back in the day, and you're
Yep.
seeing conversation actually happening. You're actually seeing uh, love amongst the family. Not saying that folks with their iPads and their phones and all that the technology in front of them don't love each other, but again, when
Right,
you're
right.
the word that you said when they're present amongst each other.
Mhm,
All right,
mhm.
that's such a huge thing, and it's unfortunate that that is no longer the norm. That's a pretty cool story, man.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah, go
backtrack,
ahead.
and I want to
Yep.
ask you to answer a question
Yeah.
that was brought up by Matt here, and he says, "Can you
Mhm.
describe gender ideology in a few
Uh-huh.
sentences?" Because I almost think
Yeah.
that that now matches and resonates to kind of where we're going, where we've been talking, right? Because we've been looking for the place of the man in today's society. We've been trying to identify and have different discussions about being comfortable in one's own skin, being comfortable
Yeah,
in one's own emotions,
yeah.
things of that nature. So, from a definition perspective, gender ideology.
I mean, gosh, the answer to that is no. I can't. I
Hmm.
can't describe that in a few sentences. It if I would encourage anybody who wants to tune in more to that and learn more about it, really, it's going to be, you're going to want to look at Alfred Kinsey, and John Money. And I say that with a hesitation because there has always been uh, a some of these areas that we struggle with our identity. Okay,
Hmm.
there's always been that, uh, and then we began to experiment in some really weird ways with these. And James, listen, man, like I said, there might be some people who might not agree with me here, but I don't agree with a lot of how we got uh, these definitions because of the people behind them, and it's really hard not to get caught up in the people like Alfred Kinsey and John Money. I think they did some pretty scrupulous things to try it for the science. Remember the Donahue show? I was
Yeah.
remember that show many years ago.
Yeah.
They had some of Kinsey's former colleagues on that show, and I'll never forget when I heard one of somebody in the audience said, "Okay, gender ideology, I get it, but do we need to experiment on babies?"
Hmm.
And one of those scientists said, "Absolutely, we have to, for the sake of understanding our sexuality." That's my problem.
Wow.
Is it's we shouldn't. I don't think that was ethical. But you know what? That's where they went. And so these are the people that really formed and shaped the ideology that we have right now. And the ideology, here's a good way to also explain it. If you think about a Christian, a Buddhist, a Muslim, anybody who is really committed to their faith, what you'll find is somebody who identifies in their faith. That's their identity. So
Yes.
a Buddhist will identify in that Buddhism. A Christian will identify in Christ. That's what they'll identify as. That's why you're seeing such a powerful uh, reaction from somebody like you were talking about last night, from a trans athlete who feels like you're being violent towards them. It's because it's a belief. An ideology is a belief. I believe that I am a man. I
Hmm.
believe that I'm a woman. I don't just think I'm a woman. I believe that I'm a woman. A belief system is much different than a thought. When somebody triggers a
Oh, come on.
thought,
Wow.
okay, you can trigger a thought in me that I failed at something.
Yeah.
But what if I believe I'm a failure, James? What if I believe I'm a failure and you trigger that belief in me, by questioning me or something? Oh, now you're going to see a reaction, brother. Okay, now I'm gonna
Hmm.
I'm gonna I'm gonna come at you, or I'm gonna totally shut down and go passive. I'll do something, right? But it's not gonna be healthy because I'm reacting out of this belief that I have about myself. So let's make sure and draw that distinction. Beliefs are very different from just thoughts. Thoughts support beliefs. Feelings support beliefs. Actions support beliefs. But man, a lot of us are walking around with really broken belief systems. And so hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. That gender ideology is really wrapped up in identity. It's how you believe, what you believe about yourself. Okay. It's not what you think about yourself. And that's
Yeah.
why so many people are getting upset, because they're going like, how could you believe that, you should be competing, you know, in, on the men's track team? How could you
Right.
believe that? I mean, on the women's track team, how could you believe that? We have to
It's
understand where
so
they're
much
coming
deeper
from,
than
man.
that. So
It's way
where
deeper.
do we where and how do we intervene? Right? Where and how do we intervene? And again, coming from I'm gonna tell folks this, right? Coming from a man and a family who is of faith, coming from that mindset where the man has a role, bringing it back to the topic, bringing it back to discussion, right? Trying to find and trying to identify healthy relationships and understand the man's role within today's
Mm,
society. How do we intervene when we see that person out there who is struggling, needs some assistance, um,
mhm,
needs someone to talk to, need, needs to share however they're feeling, but doesn't know, they don't know how to open up and
mhm,
share? How do we
mhm.
assist the least of us
That's good, James.
when they are in
Yeah.
need?
Mhm.
How again? And so I'll go back to the statement that I said a few minutes
Yeah.
ago. How do men just step up?
Yeah, I think what you said earlier is a good point. And there's so much to this, right? This conversation could go on for hours, but I would say what you said earlier is, it be vulnerable. And you know what
Okay.
I think vulnerability is? I think vulnerability is risk being vulnerable. Doesn't feel safe, right? But that's what we need to do more of that. And by the way, vulnerable isn't being, the guy who thinks that, hey, I just want to let you know, man, I'm totally honest about everything. I'm an open book, and so, you know what? When somebody says that to me, I'm like, yeah, I doubt it. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't. That's just all fluff. You want to get vulnerable with me right now? Tell me something that you're struggling with, that you're embarrassed or humiliating, if you feel humiliated
There you
about.
go, brother. Right.
Okay,
One finger
tell
pointing
me
out at
that.
you, three pointing right back at
Yeah,
me. Right.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
truth right there. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Tell me what you're afraid of. Tell me what hurts you. Tell me, your greatest fears and insecurities. What are you insecure about? Oh, I have no insecurities. I'm not. Okay, well then you're not being vulnerable, because everybody is on a spectrum, okay,
Hmm.
of I would say this, James, every single one of us is walking around with some degree of dysfunction, some less, some more, but all of us are, because there isn't any perfect person,
Completely agree.
right? There's one last thing I want to share with you. Michael Black, he's a author, and this is something he said that I thought would make a lot of sense too. He says men feel isolated. I agree with that. Men feel very isolated today. They're confused. They're conflicted about our natures. He says many feel that their very qualities that used to define them, okay, that used to define them, meaning their strength, their aggression, their competitiveness, are no longer needed or no longer wanted. Many others never felt strong or aggressive or competitive to even to begin with. Okay, so we don't know how to be, and we're terrified. That's coming from an author, Michael Black. He's also actually a comedian, but he thinks that in his words, we're walking amongst a generation of bewildered men right now. And the last thing you kind of see right now is the feminism that happened earlier in the 70s is not the feminism that we're seeing today. And
Okay. Talk about that.
there are a lot of women today, and you can get on YouTube and find a lot of these women who are talking about how do you get them before they get us? And men are on the other side doing the same thing. How do we get them before they get us? So you have these two toxic sides. None of them are healthy, my
Yeah.
opinion. But men are now really struggling because even the good guys don't want to say anything. Even the good guys don't want to risk anything, because they're so fearful, of being, hammered. You know what I mean? It's I've had some guys who've gone on some dates, a lot of dating apps out there, James, and some guys who come back from some of those dates, and the questions that they're asked are unbelievable. Like, what? And clearly the questions are being asked because there is so much. And listen, just like we talked about toxic masculinity, I'm going to talk about the same thing as toxic feminine,
Mm.
feminism is there too. And those are ones that are really, those are the women who are really out to get you, just like the toxic guys are out to get what they want as well. They're both unhealthy, but the good people get messed up in the process, James.
Yeah.
The ones who really want that genuine, deep, committed, intimate relationship, they're the ones who get screwed in the process, man. And so it's our personal responsibility, I believe, is as men is to learn how to take ownership, to be in touch with who we are, to develop a strong identity, to not get caught up in the stuff that's going on, into the woke culture, to establish healthy boundaries. I mean, all of those things. And by the way, this is exactly why I think guys are running towards certain people, man, because they're this is the stuff they're talking about, and men are eating it up. And I hope we continue, James,
Yeah.
because I do think a lot of us are it just they're I do think we're really, really confused, unfortunately, and not going to generalize, like I said, because a lot of us, some of guys, probably like you, James, a lot of guys out there that have grown up with a really strong identity. Why? Because they had really present parents. They
Yeah.
had present, I would say, put it this way to be better. They had present enough parents.
Hmm.
Nobody's had perfect parents, but some have had parents that were a little bit more well adjusted. Okay. I didn't. I had parents that weren't well adjusted at all, man. They had a
Mm.
lot of trauma they brought into their adult life, into their marriage, into their families. And so who's in the crosshairs of all that? We are.
Yeah.
And so
The
we
kids.
we 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 take that story into our adult life and into our marriage, and we cause problems. But at some point, it's our personal responsibility to start fixing those things, to be a man of agency and start dealing with these things so we can be more effective for our partners, for our kids, right? I
You
mean, here's a
you
legacy,
you
right?
just
Go
brought
ahead.
the whole thing back right there because right you started where you started and where I asked you where I reiterated was you weren't able to take care of your wife until you identified that you needed to take care of yourself,
Yeah.
right? And until
Yep.
you that agency, that ownership, that realization that
Yep.
something there's a chink in the armor, there's a little smudge on the metal or whatever the case may be. That I need to actually stand up straight and go out there and say I got to take care of this, whatever it is.
Yep. Yep. That's
And
right.
until you got to that realization, there was very little, I think, and again, third person being removed, and not saying that I know a whole lot, but there was very little that you probably could have done in a positive direction until you
Mm.
got to that realization, and then everything started over at zero, and then you grew as a unit together.
Yeah. That's really good, man. I'm gonna journal some of that out later,
Well,
James. You're really hitting it, brother.
I'll take 2% off the top. All right, let's listen.
Okay.
Let me.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead. Take some. Go to my because I
Oh
wanna
my
write
goodness.
something real quick
Okay.
here. Okay. Something I would write for my clients. All right. I'm gonna put this up, and this is one of the things I think is it's not very difficult, but this is what we need to start. We need to stop doing. So why do we? How do we get? I'm just gonna write men. This is how we get stuck. Okay. We get stuck when we do this. When we try to change things. When we try to change by feelings, feeling by thinking and by behavior. Okay. Now, here's the problem. And some of your people that talk about this a lot. Doc Rock, he talks about this all the time, right? He's a content creator coach.
Mhm.
So what does he do? He pushes people to do. Well, here's the problem. A lot of us men are getting stuck doing this. We're relying on this. I just need to feel differently. They're relying on this. I just need to think differently to change. But they don't focus on this. Okay. We sit here and we try to feel. We wait until we feel like we want to do something. We wait till we get up in the morning and we think we want to do something. But until that happens, this is going to be we're not going to do this. And when you see men, even like, I'm going to go back to men who are repairing their marriages, man. I will tell you what I see them do. They focus on this, James. And guess what comes after? Their thinking starts coming. They start thinking more positively about themselves. And then guess what happens later? They start feeling better about who they are. But it's going to start here, and the passive man is relying on this right here and relying on this right here. Feelings and thinking alone. These are good, but this needs to come first when you really want to change. I'm talking about changing something in your life. You're not going to feel or think your way out of, into change. You're going to do yourself into change, kind of like somebody who's clinically depressed. They're not going to think or feel their way out of depression. They're going to start doing stuff. The feelings and thinking will come. Does that make sense? Kind of a little bit?
Completely.
Okay. Okay. I'll shut up now.
No, man, listen, I tell you what, we just had a 201, 301 level conversation. This isn't just grade school stuff here, folks. This is where it's at. Um, I put up a couple of
Mm,
statements there. Sandy,
go ahead.
thank you for being here. She says, thank you
Mm,
so much for this discussion. We need more open and honest conversation in order to change. Completely agree. Right,
mm.
completely agree. We're here
Yep. Yep.
just like my old boss said, we're here just trying to put a dent in the universe.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Some folks know who
Totally.
that old boss of mine was. That was Mr.
Really?
Steve Jobs. So right,
That's
so
right.
I've got that right here in my studio
Yeah.
plastered across my
Yeah.
wall. So that's what we're
Yeah.
doing with that type of discussion right here.
Hey,
Marvin
I got to give
Stark.
a shout out. I got to
Oh,
give a shout out to Sandy right there because
yeah,
that's one of the most amazing, amazing therapists that I've ever known. Right
love it.
there. She's doing incredible work.
I
Okay.
love
Shout
it.
out to
I
Sandy.
love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sandy, for
Mm-hmm.
coming in and enjoying
Mm-hmm.
the session. Marvin Stark says men are not allowed to be vulnerable anymore. Come on now.
Mm,
Come on now. If a
mm.
man shows it,
Yeah.
some women look at it as being soft.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's that overarching kind of cloud
Hmm.
that we have now, or that folks tend to have. I'll say
Hmm.
we that right. I mean, I'm not completely
Good.
immune to
Yeah.
it, but it's
Yeah.
just it's that kind of thing, and
Hmm.
wondering where that initiated, where that started, where it came from, and why it's so prolific,
Hmm.
and why we can't get out of that way, why we can't get around that and be more
Yeah.
confident, be
Yeah.
more uh, whatever the positive adjectives are, right?
Yeah.
Instead of being complacent, instead of being so inner, withheld and things of that nature. How can we get around and above that? Get above the noise. I
Mm.
always say, all of the sessions that I do, where I'm trying to rise above the noise. How do we get above
Mm.
the noise? And that
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of noise. What relevant conversation, but it sounds like a lot
Mm.
of noise that Marvin is bringing up right there. Just the fact that women, he feels that women feel that way. If he was to show emotion and show vulnerability, then he's probably looking at as less of a man.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's part, unfortunately, of those unhealthy, consequences of what we're experiencing right now of some of these two really toxic, you know, movements on male and female side. And that is, it's probably one of the good guys right there, and he's getting caught in the crosshairs. Like he's probably been hurt, maybe by being vulnerable.
Mm,
And what is vulnerability? It's giving somebody the weapons of your destruction and trusting that they're going to build you up with that information. Okay, that's vulnerability. What is your weapons of destruction? Giving them stuff about you that they could hurt you with,
mm.
that they could come back at you with. And we don't want to do that today. That's too scary to do that. Everybody, nobody, I mean, the trust factor in our culture today is at an all-time low. We're all watching out, man, we're all reading between the lines,
Yeah.
and really suspicious. Um, but that again, I think goes to I can't control, the serenity prayer, man. It's so powerful. But like, look,
Hmm.
I cannot control, somebody else. All I can do is change this. I can work on this. However they respond or react, is out of my hands. Right. It's a tough one, man. But you're right. A lot of that going on. A lot of that going on.
I love that. I love that.
Anything else?
Appreciate that.
Mm.
Sandy called either you or me a liar. I'm not sure, but
She's calling me a liar. She's calling me a
well,
liar.
I'm putting that out there just to make sure that my bases are covered and clear. She came through with a smile, so I
And
don't
then
know.
she said
I
liar.
see.
That's
I'm
great.
nervous now, so I don't know. I don't want no
That's
trouble.
great.
I don't
You want any trouble? No trouble,
I
James.
I don't want no trouble. I'm gonna leave that right there. I got
Man,
two
brilliant.
I got two questions that
Good.
that I
Go
want
ahead.
to ask and kind of wrap up this session with.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of them is actually coming from Awesome With Things, coming from Matt here, and he says, "One, do you believe men should be more stoic?" Right, and that kind of a
Ism,
culmination of
yeah.
everything that we've talked
Mhm,
about.
mhm.
And I know the answer I want to say, but I'm going to defer to you. But
Mm.
to this question right here, do you believe men should be more stoic?
Man, again, uh, no easy answer. We could it's almost like saying, do you think men should, go through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous? Yeah, I mean, anything will make us better. There's some parts of Stoicism I think is really healthy. The reason I mentioned the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is because that is a program that teaches you how to take more ownership than you've ever taken in your life. Everybody would be healthier if they went through those principles, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. That's why recovering addicts are so freaky weird, man. They're amazing. They're amazing creatures because they change the chemistry of their brain through that process. They take ownership, they make amends, they're risky, they're vulnerable. I mean, they do it all. That's why when they actually do embrace their recovery, they become superior human beings. Okay. And that's coming from experience I've had with a lot of people.
Wow.
So I think it's yes, I think we can do with more of that. I do. I think the a lot of the cores of Stoicism are awesome. I love to go back to the mystics. I love to read people like Saint Augustine. Man, these are people way back who wrestled with stuff. You know that Saint Augustine, he was pretty much a sex addict. I'm just saying. Okay, I mean he was admitting that he was, bro. Okay, he admitted it in his he has writings that say He has writings that actually are called confessions, Augustine's Confessions. And I love
Him and
reading people like
Shakespeare,
that.
you know, you never know what's coming
Yes.
out of their mouth or
Oh, they
off
were
of their
nuts,
pen.
man.
Yeah, man.
And yet they changed history. And I love reading
Yeah.
them because they had that stoicism in them as well. They took ownership. They were vulnerable. They had a lot of those good parts that I think we could do a lot more of with a lot more of today. So
No,
yeah.
that's good stuff.
Yeah, man.
Rather, what are you doing next? Right? I
Mm.
mean, you're doing a lot, which is a good
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're not sitting still. You're out there
Yeah.
fighting the good fight. You're having the
Yeah.
conversations. Where can people find you to learn more about your practice, learn more about what you're doing
Mm.
for the youth, the adolescents, the adults, the people within your
Yeah.
sphere of influence? Let me put it that way, right?
Well, I don't. You can find me on the next James Hicks
Oh, there we go.
podcast. You can find me there. So as soon as James puts that out, you'll see me. Uh, get the notification on for that. Um, no, a lot of stuff I'm doing is on Instagram, right? That's right. The core of my stuff, where you find me and you'll find what's going on about me. It really is on Instagram. I founded this about a little over a year ago, The Daily Man. And that's where you see a lot of my stuff. I mean, you look at that first one. Your wife isn't only angry. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes. So when your wife gets angry, you need to understand there's more going on, usually behind the scenes. Okay. So going back to what we were talking about earlier. Now, I do on IG, I do talk a lot about my faith on IG, okay? Because it was my faith that really did I want to say reestablish because I never really had a strong identity. My faith is what gave me the stronger identity that I always wanted. And that identity has made me more of an influence, a positive influence, an influence with, where I am so much better. I'm a better listener. I have more empathy and understanding. I am more loving. I am more compassionate. I'm more tolerant. I can listen to people and not form my own opinion, while I'm listening. Those are things that how my faith has really helped me grow. And that's what you see a lot on IG and a lot of my stuff on IG. But that's where you connect with me and you can be updated on new things that I'm coming out with. If you go to thedailymanggm.com, that has a lot of some cool free stuff that I've been putting on there lately. You'll find worksheets on there that are serious worksheets, by the way. Get on my website and download some of those worksheets because those are some worksheets that I give out to my clients, right? Those are not little silly worksheets that you're just gonna, not get anything from. Download those. Make sure to get on my email list because I'm starting to develop some coursework, et cetera, things like that. And I'm a Zoom, crazy person. I mean, during the pandemic, all of my clients went over Zoom, and I created a studio for my clients, basically. Okay,
Okay.
because I wanted to give them a superior experience, and
Yeah.
so my practice grew, man, like crazy.
Love it.
And so those are the places, James, primarily.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Mhm.
good things for good people are happening, man. See, there
Yep, yep.
you put in the work. Like Joel Embiid would say. Respect the process. You out there putting in.
Well,
Okay. There's always got to be a
see,
sports reference whenever I talk. So
well,
there,
that's the
there we
thing,
go.
man.
There's my one.
See, I wanted to talk with you more about sports stuff because I'm a sports maniac, right? And I almost went to the sports psychology way,
Yeah.
James. I mean, because I was working with some college, really, really awesome college athletes, and they were fascinating. Their mindsets, man. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, and so I love talking sports, man, because I,
All right.
it's
Wednesday.
it's it's good stuff,
Hey,
you know.
Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. You've already been there. Team no sleep. You now have the keys to the front door. All right.
I love it.
So
I
you've got
love
the
it.
keys to the studio. You can log in at any time that you want, sir.
Okay,
I will send you another personal invite for
do
this
it.
Wednesday, so you can
Do
be
it.
on that show talking.
Let's
Uh,
humanize these guys. Let's humanize these athletes, man.
that's it. That's what we're doing.
Totally.
That's what
Okay.
we're doing. See, here we go with the
Mm.
Philadelphia fans here. Okay,
Go
he,
Sixers.
we need to
Man,
pray
I'm
for this
sad
guy.
right now, man. I'm like 5 miles away from my Lakers, man. What's up with another injury right now? Really? Come on.
I
AD goes down.
me and AD have problems. I I call him Mr. Glass, to be honest with you.
He is Mr. Glass,
So,
and he looks like Mr. Glass. He's perfect, Mr. Glass, right now.
right.
I'm
So
just saying, man.
when he fell down or he got hit in the head last night, I was like, oh, okay,
I
here
was
we
so
go again.
bummed, man.
All
I
right,
know.
I won't talk bad about the guy when he's
All right,
down.
all right,
We'll see what happens next game. Carlos, this was amazing,
all
man.
right.
And
Fun,
what I
fun,
like
James.
about this, and here's my analogy, you're right? It was kind of like us being crack dealers,
Mm.
right? Meaning. Let me dial it back here. Meaning that we
You
gave
better make
folks
sense of that one, brother.
we gave folks just a little bit. We gave them something that
Okay,
they can
okay.
use, something that they need, and something that they fed on.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
hopefully, folks are saying, you know what? Now I want to come back and have a deeper discussion, have a deeper
Mm.
conversation. So I would
Yeah,
love to have kind of more of an intimate conversation, more of a let's go into. Folks don't have to get necessarily into their personal things, but let's
right,
actually have a longer,
right.
more focused conversation about maybe some
Mm.
specific items in people's lives
Yeah,
and scenarios.
totally.
So that's
Mhm,
what I
mhm.
would really like to do. And there's me explaining my crack dealer kind of thing. We gave you a little something, hooked you up with something. Now you fiending,
So good.
and
So
you got to
good,
come
man.
back. I should stop using that. I really should.
I shouldn't use that with some of my clients, man.
Yeah,
That
that's
wouldn't be
bad.
good.
That's bad. You can't take me anywhere. What's her name? Sandy's
Uh,
never coming back, right? So
no,
she's
she's
gonna
never
be
come
like,
back.
"Hey, this guy, you got. I don't know who
It's
you're
something.
talking to."
It's something, man. I
Yeah.
love that, James. I'm with you, man. I love it, though. I totally agree. I'm with you,
Thank you,
man. I'm on the
brother.
same page. Okay?
Be good to yourself. I'm gonna include all of the links to your stuff in the description so folks
Cool.
can reach
Cool.
you, especially to
Mm,
your IG there. That's that's gold, folks. You need to be watching and seeing what Carlos is putting out there on the
mm.
Daily Man on his IG channel. And wish you nothing but the best. Wish you nothing
Mm.
but more continued success.
Thank you,
Uh,
James. You
I
too,
wish
brother.
you for clarity actually in these
Mm.
conversations that you're having as well, patience and
Yeah.
all of those things, empathy.
Yeah.
But let's continue to keep moving that needle, man. Keep making this dent in the universe and try to do something better every day. All right.
You got it. Love
All
it.
right,
Thanks,
brother.
James.
Y'all be
Peace
good.
out, man.